All right, friends. So, like I said earlier, we are focusing on a few skills today. We're talking about characters, we're talking about plot, we're talking about sequencing, and also about context clues. So, the first thing we're going to be talking about is characters' actions. So, when we talk about characters' actions, we think about what is the character doing? We look for those action words, those verbs, and we think about what decisions do these characters make. And because they make these decisions, what is the result? What is the consequence? Is it a good or is it a bad consequence? We can also think about why the character is doing those reasons, problems and conflicts that the characters go through, and then also lessons, the solution to their problems, and knowing what the character learns. When we think about plot, we think about the events of the story and how they kind of go from the beginning to the middle and to the end, and how these events affect the story. So if I changed that OMG moment, would it change the whole story? It would, because it would take off an important part of the story. So that's what we're going to focus on with plot. Context clues is when we use clues around unknown words to help us find the meaning of those unknown words. So we use pictures, we use helping words, words that we know, examples and definitions, synonyms and antonyms to help us find the meaning of unknown words. Sequencing is when we put things in order and we follow the order of events, so beginning, middle, and end. And also, we think about sometimes we see these graphic organizers, and sometimes one of the events is missing, and we have to decide what event came between this and this. How do I find that missing event? So today we're going to practice this with some task cards. So here's the first one. We're going to model about what did the character in this story learn based on their actions, the consequences, and things that happen in the story. So this story goes, there once was a good king who was adored by the people of his kingdom. He was known as King Midas. This name may ring a bell because he is famous. Grant him one, no, sorry, famous. The king was out walking with the mythical god Dionysus. Dionysus wanted to grant him one wish. It could be anything he wanted. King Midas was thrilled about this. He replied, I would like everything I touch to turn to gold. Dionysus replied, let it be as you request. The king thanked Dionysus and they parted ways. The king decided to try out his new power as he walked home. He turned flowers, trees, rocks, twigs, and many other things to gold. He couldn't believe his good fortune. When he returned to the palace, he was feeling hungry. He tried to eat some food, but it turned to gold. He decided to rest instead, but his mattress turned to gold and it was not comfortable. He ran into the room, was not comfortable. He couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he was miserable. Suddenly, his daughter Zoe ran into the room to hug him before he could warn her. He was horrified as she became a golden statue. The king cried out to Dionysus to return everything as it was before Dionysus appeared, saved the king's daughter, and granted his wish. He no longer had the power to turn everything he touched into gold. So the question is, what lesson did the king learn? So I'm going to think about the king's actions and the things that he did, right? So I'm going to use my whiteboard to write out some of the actions that he did. So I'm going to think about his actions, and I'm going to think about the problem, and I'm also going to think about the solution to help me find what the character learned, right? So my actions, the problem, and the solution. So King Midas wanted everything to be turned to gold, right? And so what was the problem? He couldn't eat or sleep, and he turned his daughter into a statue, right? And so his solution was to cry out to Dionysus, right? To take away the power, right? That's what he did. So he wanted him to take away the power. So, what lesson does he learn based on the actions, the problem, and the solution? So, could it be A, be careful what you wish for? B, golden beds are not comfortable? C, it is difficult to make wise decisions? Or D, he didn't really learn a lesson? So let's think about A. It says, be careful what you wish for. Well, that kind of talks about his actions because he wished that everything he touched turned into gold, right? But when it happened, he realized that it wasn't such a great wish. Think about B. Golden beds are not comfortable. Is that really a lesson that I can learn in my life and use in my life? No. So B cannot be my right answer. C. It's difficult to make wise decisions. So they're saying it's difficult to make smart decisions. Well, yes, that's true. But did King Midas learn that? No, because it's all about him accidentally turning everything into gold and not being able to do things that he realizes he doesn't need the gold. He doesn't want the gold. It's not as important as his family and being able to live, right? And he did learn a lesson because he cried out to Dionysus to return everything to as it was. If he didn't learn a lesson, then he would have just kept turning things to gold. He wouldn't have cared if his daughter was gold. He wouldn't have cared if he couldn't eat or sleep. He would have just kept doing it. But he did learn a lesson, and that was A, be careful what you wish for. So as you do actions, you've got to, as you do asking yourself, what did the character learn? You got to think about what were the character's actions, what were the problem, and what was the solution. So that's going to be practice for character actions. Now we're going to talk about plot and understanding why a paragraph or an event is important to the story. So this story reads, recently, Lindsay's dog went missing. Lindsay's family looked everywhere for her. They tromped through the woods, drove all around the neighborhood, and put out flyers asking for her return. They were surprised she was gone because she had never wandered off like this. Finally, after weeks of looking, Lindsay's family gave up the search. Mom knew that Lindsay was feeling down about losing her precious companion, so she decided to surprise her with a new puppy. Lindsay squealed with excitement when she saw the beautiful German Shepherd. She was so grateful that Mom had gotten her such a special gift. Lindsay said, I think I'll name him Buddy. So it says in the first paragraph, the reader learns that Lindsay. So what do we learn in the very first paragraph? Was it A, she was mourning her dog's death, B, she lost her pet, or C, she got a new puppy? So in paragraph 1, they talk about how her dog went missing, how they were looking all over the place, but that they finally gave up. Nowhere did it talk about her dog dying, right? So paragraph 1 is all about Lindsay losing her dog, right? And so I ask myself, why is that a part of the story? Why is that important? So my best answer here is B. And I think about, why is that an important part of my story? Well, it sets me up to know why Lindsay got a new dog and also kind of helps me know her problem. It tells me the problem of the story, which is Lindsay losing her dog and how important it was to her to find him. So in paragraph 1, we learned that Lindsay lost her pet, right? So when we think about plot, we've got to think about, why is this event important in my story? Okay? So let's talk about context clues. So here they want us to read the following sentence and find the meaning of the underlined word. So the large buck came to a sudden halt when it sensed danger in the forest. It says, from the clues in the sentence, what does the word halt mean? So the large buck. So this is what a buck is. It's like it's a male deer, right? It came to a sudden halt when it said when it sensed danger in the forest. So here's my unknown word, right? What are some clue words that I could use around? Sudden could be a clue word, right? I mean, just all of a sudden, right? Danger, right? And also forest. What do deers and bucks do in the forest? Well, they run, right? They run around the forest. That's their homes. So if they came to a sudden halt when it was in the forest, it is uh thinking about what the word halt means. I see sudden, danger, and forest. Those clue words help me mean, does it mean stop, start, or eating? Well, let's replace the word to see which one makes the most sense. So it says the large buck came to a sudden stop when it sensed danger in the forest. That could make sense. Let's see B. The large buck came to a sudden start when it sensed danger in the forest. Do you think they're going to start if they sense danger? If they feel danger around them? Probably not. Eating. The large buck came to a sudden eating when it sensed danger in the forest. Are they going to be eating if they think there's danger near? No. So my best answer using all of these clues here is that halt means stop. So you've got to use the clues around you to understand the words that you are trying to figure out. Now, here is my very last question with sequencing. So with sequencing, we're going to be thinking about how do I find the missing event in this story. So let's first read the story. It says, Steve and Sandra decided to take a trip to the mountains of Colorado. They rented a motorhome to drive so they could stay in RV parks and enjoy the beautiful nature around them. One day, they decided to drive up to a camp on Pikes Peak Highway. There were some very steep sections that seemed to go straight up the mountain. They were enjoying the drive and sights when all of a sudden they slid on some gravel and almost went over the edge of the cliff. One of the front wheels was hanging over the edge and they were terrified. Before they knew it, many people were stopping to help. Luckily, a tow truck was not far behind, so he hooked onto the motorhome and pulled them back to safety. Steve and Sandra couldn't thank the strangers enough for saving them. So it says, which event belongs in the empty box? So I'm going to read the events that I have. Steve and Sandra began driving up the mountain. I have number 2 is blank. I have 3, they were hanging over the cliff. And 4, strangers helped them to safety, right? So here we go. So I'm going to write them on my paper. Steve and Sandra began driving up the mountain. I'm missing event number 2, so I'm not going to write anything there. And then they were hanging over the cliff, right? Over the cliff. And then strangers helped them to safety. All right. So here I have my sequences. So I'm missing event number 2, right? So that means that event number 2 has to come after event number 1, but it has to come before event number 3. So it has to be in the middle between event number 1 and event number 3, right? So in my story, when did it say they drove up the mountain? It said here. So they decided to drive up to camp on Pikes Peak Highway. So here they started to drive up the mountain, right? Then they were hanging over the cliff. So it says one and almost went over the cliff. One of the front wheels was hanging over the edge and they were terrified. So my event has to happen somewhere between here and this sentence here. Got to go in the middle because I'm missing that middle event between 1 and 3, right? So here, let's see. It says, a tire blew out on the motorhome. Did a tire blow out? Is that why they went over the edge? No, they didn't. The tire didn't blow out. Steve and Sandra decided to go camping. So that happened before event number 1. So can that be my answer? No, because it has to come after event number 1. They hiked up to Pikes Peak in Colorado. Again, excuse me, that happened before event number 1, right? So it can't be that one. The motorhome slid on some gravel. Here it is. It says right here, they were enjoying this drive when all of a sudden they slid on some gravel, and then they were terrified because they were hanging over the edge. So it does it come between um my event number 1 and event number 3? It sure does. So my answer is D. The motorhome slid on some gravel. So when we are answering these questions, we've got to think about characters' actions, right? What did they learn? Plot. Why is this an important part of my story? Context clues. How can I use words around unknown words to find the meaning? And then sequencing, finding the events, putting them in order, or finding a missing event that comes either before, after, or in between others. Okay, so in just a second, I'm going to come back and I'm going to share the exit ticket with you and share what you're going to do for your exit ticket. I'll see you in the next section.